With his family business at stake, Donald Trump is again in front of a judge for the first day of his civil fraud trial in New York. Inside court, there you can see Trump with his attorney sitting quietly before the proceedings began. But outside court, he has been putting on a political spectacle, attacking the judge and prosecutor in remarks this morning and during the lunch recess in the last hour. Both times leaning on his go-to claims about the case, just a few yards away from where he's being tried.
This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. We have a rogue judge who rules that properties are worth a tiny fraction, 1/100th, a tiny fraction of what they actually are. You have a racist attorney general who's a horror show who ran on the basis that she was going to get Trump before she even knew anything about me.
And in just a few minutes, trial is set to resume. Let's get you now to the courthouse with CNN's Kara Scannell. Kara, what have you heard about what's to come? What should we expect this afternoon?
What's happening, friends? Welcome to Dr. John right now. In a packed Manhattan courtroom during the civil fraud trial, Trump took the witness stand and delivered a 7-word exchange that would become one of the most devastating moments in modern legal history. The case, seeking $250 million, exposed years of allegedly inflated property values at the heart of his business empire. Donald Trump walks into that courtroom with the swagger of someone who has spent his entire life commanding rooms. He's been here before, of course. He's faced lawsuits, depositions, investigations, but this time feels different. This time he's under oath, hand placed on a Bible, promising to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The prosecutor, Kevin Wallace, doesn't look like a man about to deliver a knockout blow. He looks calm, almost bored, like he's asking about the weather. But that calmness is the most dangerous thing in that room, because Wallace knows something Trump has momentarily forgotten. He knows that the most powerful weapon in a courtroom isn't shouting or bluster or crowd-pleasing rhetoric.
Well, Jessica, the opening statements wrap this morning and they'll move into the witness testimony. But in opening statements, the state attorney general's office made their case that year after year, loan after loan, former president inflated the value of his assets on these financial statements in order to get better terms for insurance and for bank loans. So what they previewed in their case is they said that they will call some witnesses who will testify to this, including Michael Cohen. He's Trump's former fixer. He's the reason why the AG's office started this investigation after his testimony on Capitol Hill, where he said that Trump did inflate the value of the assets when it would benefit him. They also said another Trump organization executive will be testifying that the chief financial officer of the company had told him that Donald Trump liked it when his net worth went up. And that is the basis of this theory of the case, that he had inflated the value of his assets to increase his net worth so he could get these loans. Now, Trump's attorneys pushing back, saying that this is not fraud, this is real estate, that everyone comes up with their own valuations and it doesn't mean one person has committed fraud. They said that there's no conspiracy among the children. Donald Trump.
It's a calendar, and he's about to use one to dismantle a president in real time. The question seems simple enough. How involved were you in preparing your 2021 financial statements? Now, any seasoned witness knows how to handle this. You deflect. You defer to your accountants. You say you don't recall specific details. You give boring, safe, lawyer-approved answers that put the prosecutor to sleep. But Trump doesn't do boring. Trump doesn't do safe. Trump does Trump. And in that moment, his instincts take over. The same instincts that have worked at every rally, every press conference, every television appearance of his entire public life. He leans forward, that familiar expression of self-assured confidence spreading across his face, and he tells the courtroom that he wasn't really involved in those financial statements because he was simply too busy running the country, too busy dealing with China, too busy handling Russia, too busy with national security, big important president stuff.
Is also accused here of conspiring with his sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. And they're saying that the only evidence in this case is based on the serial liar, Michael Cohen. Now, politics did enter the courtroom here because one of Trump's attorneys, Alina Habba, began her opening statement saying that the Attorney General's office could have brought this case several years ago, even before they did an investigation, a nod to some of the statements that James has been making, including ones that they pointed to this morning outside of court. Take a listen.
My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. And it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it. The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case.
So Haba's saying that that is the reason why she was introducing politics into the case, because James was making comments. Of course, if you said Trump has been making many comments at any break in this trial. Now, the judge said that he had already ruled that Letitia James's motivation here was not on trial, that it is the factors in this case of whether Trump did defraud lenders.
The kind of answer that would have a rally crowd on its feet cheering. The courtroom doesn't cheer. The courtroom goes silent, because here's the thing about 2021. Everyone in that room knows something Trump seems to have conveniently forgotten in that moment. Joe Biden was president in 2021. Trump left the White House in January of that year. The financial statements in question were prepared during a time when he was absolutely not running the country, because he was simply not the president anymore. It's the kind of detail that would be embarrassing in any context, but under oath, with a court reporter transcribing every word, with a judge watching, with prosecutors taking notes, it's catastrophic. And Kevin Wallace, that calm prosecutor, doesn't need to shout or object or raise his voice. He just asks one question. Just to confirm, you were not president in 2021, correct? The silence that follows is deafening. Trump has nowhere to go. He has to answer, no, I was not. That's it. 7 words. One question.
And others by making an inflated values to some of his assets and have been fixated on the value of Mar-a-Lago, that's Trump's compound, with the judge finding in a ruling that it was about $18 million. They're saying it could be worth as much as $1.5 billion. A lot of testimony will be the nitty-gritty of finances and how they came up with the valuations for these properties and whether any of the bankers felt that they were misled. Now, there was only one moment in this court hearing where Donald Trump, he walked past Letitia James, who was sitting in the front row 4 times. Only in the last time did he walk past her and he glanced over at her. Now, his son, Eric Trump, is the only other Trump in attendance. When he was leaving right before the lunch break, he went over and shook the Attorney General's hands. They exchanged some words, and then he left the courtroom. So it's going to begin just moments from now, and we're going to get back inside and bring you the latest from there. Jess?
A lot of dynamics at play. Kara, we'll go back in. We'll check back in with you later. Thanks so much for that reporting. Let's go now to CNN's Kristen Holmes, who's just outside of Trump Tower, also there in Manhattan. And Kristen, we know that Trump did not have to appear. This is a civil case. He didn't have to be there. Is this a strategy to kind of bolster his legal case? Is this part of the optics of all of this?
And the President of the United States, the man who built his entire brand on never backing down, on always having the perfect comeback, on being smarter and tougher and more cunning than everyone else, is caught in a lie so obvious that a child with a calendar could have spotted it. A former federal prosecutor would later call this a paradigm example of Trump saying whatever he desires in the moment, not whatever is true, not whatever happened, whatever he desires. Read that again and let it sink in. This is a man for whom words are not reports about reality. They are tools for winning the next 30 seconds. At a rally, that works beautifully. The crowd roars, the cameras capture the moment, and any fact-checking that happens comes the next day when nobody's watching. But in a courtroom, there's a transcript, there's a judge, there's a prosecutor who has spent months preparing for exactly this moment. And the receipts are always there waiting.
Well, Jessica, when I was talking to these advisors about why he was going to show up today, they originally said that he wanted to have a show of force, that it was important for him to look the judge in the eye. But what we've seen here today is that this is also part of a campaign strategy. Now, for several months, we have been asking these campaign advisors, how are you going to navigate 2024 presidential looming trials? And today we saw at least part of that. They are essentially turning these trials, they turned it today, into a campaign event. When Trump was leaving Trump Tower, they blasted out a statement on Letitia James, one that you would likely see against a political opponent. You have seen Trump there at that event going back to the cameras, back to the microphones time and time again, giving more updated remarks, very similar to what he's saying in the first place, but still going back to that attention. You know that's something that former President Trump likes. He likes the visuals. He likes the optics. And this is clearly a way for him to take control of the narrative. So when you're talking about campaigning in the middle of the trials, well, how can you make this essentially a plan to take all the oxygen out of the race? And that seems to be what they are doing. Now, Trump himself really said as much, making this political when he was asked why he was here today.
Trump, why do you want to be here first and third? Because I want to watch this witch hunt myself. I've been going through a witch hunt for years, but this is really now getting dirty between Jack Smith and between all of these DOJ people helping them along. This is a pure witch hunt.
Here's where this story gets truly interesting. That moment, as humiliating as it was, wasn't just an embarrassing clip for late-night comedians to play. It became evidence. It became a weapon. Prosecutors in Manhattan later filed papers in a criminal case, the hush money case, and they told the court something extraordinary. If Trump ever took the stand, they planned to cross-examine him on, and this is their exact phrase, his history of lying under oath, falsifying documents, and ignoring court orders. Think about that for a moment. Prosecutors are filing papers in advance, essentially saying we have a list of this man's documented lies. We have judges' rulings confirming them. We have jury verdicts establishing them, and we are ready to read every single one back to him if he dares to testify. That's not a gaffe story anymore. That's a pattern story. That's a credibility death spiral, where the man's own recorded words become the evidence against him, and the pattern continues to deepen. In that same fraud case, the judge went further than just noting the calendar mistake. He formally found that Trump had lied under oath. Not spun, not exaggerated, not made a mistake. Lied under oath. A sitting American president now carries that finding on his record, and his lawyers cannot make it disappear because it's not an opinion piece or a news story. It's a ruling. A federal judge in another case found evidence that Trump misled his own lawyers, his own defense attorneys, badly enough to pierce attorney-client privilege. That is extraordinary. Attorney-client privilege is one of the most protected things in American law. What you tell your lawyer stays secret, period. The only way to lose it is if a court finds evidence that you used your lawyers to further a crime or fraud. And a federal judge found exactly that evidence. When your own lawyers can't trust you, who exactly is supposed to? Now, let's be fair and precise before we go deeper. Trump has never been criminally charged with perjury. Nobody has convicted him of lying under oath as a crime. The findings we're talking about came in civil rulings and pretrial filings. His team disputes all of it. They call every case political, every judge biased, every prosecutor corrupt. And they've fought every ruling through appeals courts with some real wins along the way. But here's what you need to understand. What judges, not pundits, have actually put on paper about this man's relationship with the truth is devastating. And prosecutors have figured out something brilliant. They don't need to catch him in new lies anymore. They don't need to prove new falsehoods. They just need to stack up the old ones, certified by judges and juries, and let the pile do the talking. This is the credibility death spiral, and it changes everything about how Trump approaches the legal system. In the hush money case, Trump promised loudly and repeatedly that he would testify in his own defense. Absolutely 100%, he told the media. He'd take the stand. He'd tell his side. He'd fight back. But when the moment came, after prosecutors filed that devastating notice about their cross-examination plans, the man who never backs down from a fight quietly sat down. He never took the stand. Now, every defendant has the right to stay silent, and no jury is allowed to hold it against him. That's the law, and it's a good law. But you and I are not a jury, and we're allowed to notice things. We're allowed to notice that the self-proclaimed greatest counterpuncher in history, the man who never backs down, looked at a cross-examination built from his own documented lies and decided the safest place was silence. And that silence from the loudest man in American politics might be the most honest statement he ever made in a courtroom. His lawyers made that call for a reason. They had watched the New York clips. They knew exactly what happens when their client meets a calm prosecutor holding a calendar. They knew that every time Trump tries his rally act in a courtroom, the same thing happens. The receipts come out and the story collapses. So let's talk about what happens when that pattern extends beyond the stand and into every aspect of the legal proceedings. Because the sentencing speech in the falsified records case is where this gets truly wild. When the falsified records case ended in conviction and Trump finally stood before the court for sentencing, he had one job. Every defense lawyer in America gives the same advice at that moment. Show remorse, or if you cannot manage remorse, at least show restraint. Say little. Say nothing false. The judge is deciding your punishment, and the transcript lasts forever. Instead, Trump called the entire process corrupt, rigged, a witch hunt, a sham. He declared himself persecuted and accepted exactly zero accountability. A legal analyst who went through that speech line by line found it was not just defiant, it contained multiple provable falsehoods. He claimed the district attorney didn't really want to bring the case. False. He brought it, fought for it, and won it. He claimed he was indicted merely for calling an expense, a framing the analyst called flatly nonsensical, given the evidence of falsified records at the heart of the conviction. The analyst's conclusion was withering. Even as the court went relatively easy on punishment, Trump's own words showed contempt for the rule of law and were riddled with lies and irrelevancies. Think about that. Handed leniency, standing in front of a judge, the safest possible move being silence, and the instinct to lie still won. That's not strategy. That's not calculation. That's reflex. It's the same reflex that made him claim he was busy in the White House in 2021. The same reflex that led him to defame E. Jean Carroll repeatedly, costing him tens of millions of dollars in jury verdicts. The same reflex that made him mislead his own lawyers in the classified documents case. It's a pattern so consistent, it's almost mechanical. When the pressure rises, when the spotlight hits, when the moment demands truth, his brain reaches for the answer that sounds best, that feels best, that wins the next 30 seconds, regardless of whether it bears any resemblance to reality. This is where most people get the story wrong in both directions. Some folks watch that clip and start celebrating, thinking he committed perjury, thinking he's going to prison, thinking it's finally over. But pump the brakes on that narrative. Civil findings that someone lied are not criminal convictions. Perjury cases are rare and difficult to prove, even against ordinary people, let alone a former president with infinite lawyers and endless appeals. The other camp, the one saying this is all meaningless noise, just haters clipping a gaffe, is equally wrong. A judicial finding that you lied under oath is not noise. Prosecutors putting your history of falsehoods into formal court filings is not noise. That's the state, on paper, in the official record, telling every future jury, do not believe this man. Here's the deeper truth about why this pattern keeps repeating. Trump built his entire public life in arenas with no referee. At a rally, if he says a crowd was the biggest ever, the crowd cheers. On TV, if he says something false, the correction runs the next day when nobody is watching. In business negotiations, bluffing is half the game. For 50 years, the lesson his life taught him was simple. Saying it makes it true enough, and confidence beats accuracy. But a courtroom is designed over centuries to be the exact opposite environment. There's an oath with penalties attached. There's a court reporter typing every word into a permanent record. There's a judge whose entire job is weighing credibility. And there's opposing counsel who has spent months preparing binders of your own prior statements, waiting for you to contradict them. The 2021 White House moment is the perfect collision of those two worlds. The rally version of that answer kills. Too busy running the country, China, Russia, applause. The courtroom version dies in 7 words because the room contains a man with a calendar and the legal right to use it. And this is why the pattern keeps repeating across every case. He doesn't adjust because he cannot. The instinct that built him is the same instinct that keeps detonating on the stand. His superpower and his kryptonite are the same thing. He cannot stop playing by rally rules even when the consequences are catastrophic because rally rules are all he knows. They have worked for his entire adult life. They made him a television star. They made him a president. They made him a billionaire. Why would the rules suddenly change just because he's in a courtroom? Except they do change. They change completely. And the man who has spent his life learning that lies work is now learning, painfully and publicly, that they don't work everywhere. Now let's put the whole machine together because this is the part that should stick with you. Prosecutors figured out something important about Trump, and it changed their entire strategy. They don't need to charge him with perjury. They don't even need to catch him in new lies. They just need judges and jurors to reach one conclusion. Nothing this man says can be trusted. And every documented lie, every judicial finding, every defamation verdict is a brick in that wall. That's why the Manhattan DA's filing listed his history of lying under oath. That's why they called the Carroll lies crucial evidence about his believability. Once the wall is built, Trump loses his single greatest weapon, the ability to talk his way out. He cannot testify because cross-examination becomes a firing squad made of his own quotes. He cannot stay silent comfortably because his brand is the fighter who always punches back. Every path is bad, and he built every one of those paths himself, one lie at a time. And here's the part that extends beyond Trump himself. Watch how differently this plays out depending on who you are. A regular person who lies under oath gets charged. A regular person who violates court orders gets locked up. A regular person found to have misled their lawyers in furtherance of a fraud is finished. Career, reputation, freedom gone. Trump has racked up every one of those findings and remains the most powerful man on earth. His supporters look at that and see proof the system is out to get him and still cannot touch him. His critics look at it and see proof the system has one set of rules for the powerful and another for everyone else. But notice both sides end up believing the same corrosive thing, that the law is not applied evenly. And that belief spreading through a country from both directions at once is more dangerous to America than any single verdict in any single case. Credibility is not just a legal asset, it's a presidential one. When a president with a judicial finding that he lied under oath tells the country anything about a war, about the economy, about your drug prices, a growing share of Americans, including swing voters and even some Republicans, run it through that filter. Trust me, says the man whose own lawyers could not. That is the cost. It compounds daily, and it never fully comes back. Every documented falsehood is sitting in a file waiting. The next case, the next deposition, the next time he raises his right hand, that file comes out first. His past lies are now the opening exhibit against his future words. So let's land this plane with the honest bottom line. No hype needed. Trump took an oath and told a story that a calendar destroyed, and he admitted it on the record in 7 words. A judge formally found he lied under oath. Juries found his statements about E. Jean Carroll false and defamatory. A federal judge found evidence he misled his own attorneys badly enough to shatter attorney-client privilege. Prosecutors put his history of falsehoods into official court filings as a standing weapon. And when the moment came to back up his 100% promise to testify, he sat down. No perjury charge, no prison for lying. His team calls it all a witch hunt, and the appeals grind on. But the record is the record, and the record says something no spin can erase. The most powerful man in the world has been told by the American justice system in writing, again and again, "We do not believe you." When that file opens again, and it will, the story continues. His past lies become the opening exhibit against his future words. And a man who built his entire life on the power of talking his way out of anything has finally encountered a room where words fail. A courtroom is the one room in America where the superpower dies. There's a transcript, there's a judge, there's a prosecutor with a binder full of your own words waiting. And every time Trump has walked into that room and tried his rally act, the same thing has happened. The receipts came out, and the story collapsed. It happened in New York. It happened in the defamation cases. It happened in the classified documents investigation. It happened at sentencing, and it will happen again. The real tragedy here, the one that extends beyond partisan politics and legal victories and losses, is the erosion of something essential. Faith in the referee. Faith that the rules apply equally. Faith that when someone takes an oath, their word means something. Trump's defenders see a man persecuted by a biased system. His critics see a man who has exposed the system's willingness to protect the powerful. But both interpretations feed the same dangerous conclusion. The system doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And when a country loses faith in its legal system, when people on all sides believe that justice is just another weapon in the political arsenal, the damage is deeper than any verdict could ever repair. That's the real stake here. Not one man's record, everyone's faith in the referee. Trump took an oath and told a story that a calendar destroyed, and he admitted it on the record in 7 words. A judge formally found he lied under oath. Juries found his statements about E. Jean Carroll false and defamatory. A federal judge found evidence he misled his own attorneys badly enough to shatter attorney-client privilege. Prosecutors put his history of falsehoods into official court filings as a standing weapon. And when the moment came to back up his 100% promise to testify, he sat down. No perjury charge, no prison for lying. His team calls it all a witch hunt, and the appeals grind on. But the record is the record, folks. And the record says something no spin can erase. The most powerful man in the world has been told by the American justice system in writing again and again, "We do not believe you."